Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. That's all I kept hearing. We got Maduro. It seems that the U.S. had military strikes on Venezuela and they captured the president of Venezuela and brought him to the United States. We got him. Why did we go after him? For drugs, of course. We went after a sitting president for drugs. Was this even legal? That's what I want to explore today. I want to find out, why did we really go after him? I've done a little bit of research, looked back on the past, and said, this can't be. We went to another country because it's a drug cartel. And I looked at how much drugs are coming through. Venezuela sends about 10% of the US drugs to the United States. Mexico, about 90. We don't invade China for fentanyl, but we want to go to a country, take their sitting president, arrest him, and bring him to the United States because he's a drug dealer. That didn't really make sense to me when I did a little bit of research, because previously, just a few months ago, Trump pardoned a drug dealer. Yes, someone who was sending 400 tons of cocaine to the United States. So if it's all about drugs, why would you pardon a drug dealer? Let's find out what happened with that. Crazy, isn't it?
Tonight, the former president of Honduras, serving time in a U.S. prison, walking free after a pardon from President Donald Trump over the weekend. Juan Orlando Hernandez was serving a 45-year federal prison sentence after being convicted on drugs and weapons smuggling charges just last year. Word reaching his wife and adult children at their home in the country's capital.
Juan Orlando volverá, volverá, volverá.
On Truth Social, Mr. Trump saying Hernandez was treated very harshly and unfairly. On Sunday, defending the decision aboard Air Force One.
Well, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden. Look, Biden didn't know he was alive, but it was the people that surround the Resolute desk, surround Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up, and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country, and they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup, and I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
Doesn't that sound eerily familiar? He was a drug dealer, but Trump didn't think so. So he set him free, even though he went to court, went to trial, sentenced in federal court to drug dealing. So why did we really go into Venezuela? And did we have a right to go into Venezuela? Well, I don't know if you know who this is. This is Hugo Chavez. Before there was a Maduro, there was a Hugo Chavez. And Hugo Chavez was the president of Venezuela. I translated this. He was speaking in Spanish, but I don't want you to take the time to read. I just want you to hear what he says. What did he say when he was alive about the United States? Way before Trump, way before Obama. What did he say the United States was up to? Why was he scared? Let's find out.
Is the possibility of war there? So?
But you don't see the threat that the United States empire poses to us.
Why do you think the United States wants to attack Venezuela?
Well, there's the recent history. I'll tell you the most important reason. Right here is the largest oil reserve on this planet. Here in Venezuela, we have oil. For more than 100 years, the United States has been running out of oil. The main reason the United States wants to install a government here that's subordinate to the empire like they had for a long time, is Venezuelan oil.
I want to ask you a question, and I hope it doesn't bother you. Are you paranoid about the United States?
No, not at all. I'm just a realist. If you could ask that question, you just ask me to them, though you can't because most of them are dead. Ask that question to Jacobo Arbenz, who was president of Guatemala. When I was being born, you hadn't been born yet. Just because he wanted to carry out an agrarian reform, the United States invaded and overthrew him. You could ask that question to João Goulart, the Brazilian. He was overthrown by the United States. You could ask that question to Salvador Allende, the martyred president. You could ask that question to Juan Bosch, the former Dominican president, overthrown by the United States invasion. You could ask that question to my General Omar Torrijos, assassinated by the CIA, and many more. Isn't that paranoid? It's the truth. I am fulfilling the responsibility of a head of state. The paranoid ones are others, the far right, the crazed ones who believe the world will never change, the piti-Yankee bourgeoisies of this continent who insist on imposing their will at all costs. They want to keep dominating these peoples, but they won't be able to do it. Only after September 11th did the United States start making a list of terrorists. Well, and I'm also on that list. The United States, the US government, dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, an atomic bomb and another on Nagasaki. That is terrorism.
Even Hugo Chavez was saying, it's about the oil. It's all about the oil. Haven't we learned anything? We went into Iraq because why? They had weapons of mass destruction. We took out Gaddafi, fought in Syria, Yemen, Somalia. And when we go in and take these dictators out and we leave this vast empty space, what do you think happens? Do you think by taking out the dictator, you actually level up the country or you make it worse? Was Iran better with Saddam Hussein or without? And if we can go into Venezuela and take the oil, why couldn't Saddam Hussein go into Kuwait and take the oil? And I'm going to show you what the real reason is, and we'll get through this to find out what the real reason we went into there for. And Venezuela was just a pawn. One thing I kept seeing was how the people on the street felt. Now I've seen the people celebrating, hey man, Venezuela's free. Most of those people in the United States. And I'm wondering, since Venezuela is so free, when are they going back? Are we going to deport them back? They've been here a few years, 6, 7, 8 years, some of them. When do we plan to deport them? But let's keep going.
Make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure.
This is a young lady in Venezuela, so hopefully this comes through. Let me put her full screen. This is what they're saying in Venezuela.
The hell with it. Where is it? All together, we are going to go out and defend the homeland because this homeland is ours. This homeland belongs to our future generations. This homeland belongs to our children, and it deserves that we give and offer our lives for it because Venezuela is ours. Venezuela deserves respect. Stay alert, communities, because they're not coming for us. They're coming for the oil, and they're coming for you too. Understand this. What they want here is oil to continue their war. Understand that what they want here is our land so they can keep fueling wars. They are not a peacekeeping army. The time of the land is the time of hardship, and here we are, compatriots, defending the land. This land is ours. Long live Venezuela.
You think it's about the drugs? You think we went to drugs? China sends fentanyl over here all the time. Mexico supplies the drugs. Do you think we went there for drugs? The next person, he's a financial person. So if you are into finances, you might want to see what's going on and start making some changes.
Venezuela is sitting on the world's largest reserves of oil in the world. They're sitting on more oil than Saudi Arabia, and they're sitting on 4 times more oil than the United States. And we know that the United States now wants to make money off of Venezuela's oil. How do we know?
How do we know? Before this invasion, Trump went to the oil companies and said, would you go back into Venezuela if you had the opportunity? They basically said no. So if it was about drugs, why would you go to an oil company and say, would you go back in there? But I didn't say it was about drugs or about oil. Listen to what came out of his mouth.
Well, we can just listen to what President Trump said. Here's what President Trump said, quote, "We're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground," meaning oil. "And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and the people outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela," meaning oil companies. "And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country."
We're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing. But
listen to the words. We are going to build up their oil. Why? This is their resources. These are their natural resources. But we're going to go in and build them up. And then we're going to be reimbursed for building them up, of course. And then we're going to get that oil for very cheap, of course. You know why? Because in Texas, the exact crude oil, and I don't want to skip ahead, but the exact type of oil we want, we refine in Texas, in Louisiana. Oh, that's the best kind of oil there is. And they're sitting on the world's most. You know who else has a lot of resources that we call poor? Africa. Oh, they have the most raw resources. But why are they poor? Why a continent that has diamonds, gold, copper, zinc, all of the resources that we want? Why are they so poor? Because we extract and don't pay them anything. So do you think that we're not going to do the same thing to Venezuela? Do you think that we're going to go in there and just say, hey, this is your oil, this is your land? We've done it before. We're repeating ourselves.
That's going to be paid, and we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Now,
this documentary here will show you the exact reason why we went to Venezuela. I want you to watch this. I want to try to butt in just as little as possible. And I'm going to make this full screen. I want you to hear why. Really, what happened?
Donald Trump is insisting that the main reason he's interested in Venezuela, the main reason the US is kind of looking at tankers off the coast of Venezuela comes back to drugs, the trade, the smuggling of illegal drugs out of Venezuela. But what if it's not just that? Maybe there's something else going on. What if it's partly about oil? Now, on the surface, you might be thinking, why does America even need Venezuelan oil? And I can kind of understand your point, because if you look at just total oil production, look, this is up until 2005, the US was there, Venezuela was there, Saudi Arabia was there. But as you probably know, since then, everything has changed. Look, American output has gone through the roof, way above Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela has gone basically to the floor. And that's kind of post-Chavez, Maduro. They're one of the minnows now, I think 21st biggest producer in the world. So again, that question, why should America care? Well, in the US, that big rise is largely down to this. It's down to the shale revolution. So you've got fracking all around the US producing extraordinary amounts of crude oil. And here's where we get to the interesting bit. Because when you're thinking about crude oil, maybe you're just thinking about, well, look, barrels of oil. It's all the same, isn't it? Well, actually, no. So if you kind of look at crude oil, there are various different types of crude in different parts of the world. There's actually kind of various different ways you can categorize it. But one way you can look at it is look at the kind of density. So you're basically looking at how thick that crude is. And when I say thick...
And I won't let him continue, but just to give you a heads up, the thicker the oil, the better the oil, the more uses for the oil. And we have a lot of natural gas and things that we use in the United States. I mean, we're great producers, high output, but that's not the good oil. That's not the oil we really want. The oil we really want and the ones that's best for us, that's in Venezuela. And they're not using it the way we want them to use it. So we got to go in there and make sure they use it to the best frame that we want to.
I mean, literally how thick. This is showing you global production broken down by the density of that oil. And so you've got the kind of medium stuff. And this is probably, if you've got kind of image in your mind of what crude oil looks like, it's a bit like this, you know, it's kind of black, but it's not too viscous, it flows around. But there's other stuff as well. So this is light crude. And it kind of almost looks like a smoothie, doesn't it? And that's the same stuff. This is still crude oil, but down to the kind of geological and the biological conditions in the ground when it was being formed, you know, hundreds of millions of years ago, it comes out looking a bit different. And so that's light. You've also got heavy stuff. And it's kind of relatively small in global production, but this is gloopy, super viscous stuff. Heavy oil, so heavy, medium, light. Remember that. And remember also, the key thing here is, you get it out of the ground, it may look like that, but ultimately, you still need it to go into, you know, someone's car, or indeed, you know, be turned into chemicals. Basically, you need to process it, and that processing, that happens in places like this, in refineries, and there are refineries all over the world, of course. There are refineries all over the US as well. There's kind of more than 100 of them. And if we kind of look at where those refineries are, well, so there's some in California. So the history in America, actually, historically, a lot of the early Californian oil, that was the heavy, gloopy stuff. And if you look at kind of some of the refineries in America, so here are some of the refineries. There's one in LA there. These are the 10 biggest. You've got some up here around kind of towards Canada. We'll kind of come to that in a second. But a lot of them are down there, kind of Texas, Louisiana, on the coast. And here's the critical thing. These refineries are primarily set up for heavy oil, for taking that gloopy stuff and turning it into gasoline and all of the other different products. But here's where things get interesting. And remember that chart I showed you a moment ago, the one which showed kind of shale oil and how it kind of went through the roof? The oil that's generally produced with shale oil, the fracking oil, that comes out of the ground mostly in the light form. So it's the smoothie. It's something.
And we don't want that oil. No, we want the dark oil. And I don't know, when he shows the map again, you know, Venezuela is right there off the coast, right in our Gulf. That's the oil we want. That's what we want to bring. And let me tell you a little bit of history, how all this happened. There was a time that Venezuela was selling this oil. Oh, they were doing great. They were supplementing all of the Latin American countries, Cuba, and Cuba, DR, Colombia. They were supplementing with their oil. And what they were saying was, this would give you more, instead of worrying about oil, we're going to give it to you so cheap that you can work on other things like medical supplies, other industries. We're going to help you out with our oil, and then this will allow you to do other things. And then we said, no. You brought the price of oil down because you're not selling it to the United States. And because you're not selling it to the United States, we're going to put an embargo on you. So you can't sell it anywhere. And then we threaten the other Latin countries that if you buy this oil, oh, we're going to cut you off. So what did that do? If your main product that you sell is cut off and you can't sell it anymore, that brings you in shambles. That makes your economy go down. And that's what we did. Not only did we hurt Venezuela, we hurt all the Latin American countries. And the reason a lot of them aren't saying anything now is because if you listen to what the Hugo Chavez said in the beginning, we've already done, we've invaded most of these countries anyway and propped up our own leadership. Why? Because we want to control everything. We do it all over the world. If it was about humanitarian and police, we do something in Haiti. We do something in the places in Africa. But it's not about that. It's not about drugs. It's about the money, the oil.
Sometimes it's actually even clear, it comes out of the ground clear rather than black. And that's the majority of American production right now. Shale oil tends to be light stuff. And actually that's kind of going back 10 years. Look at where we are now. Look at those bars. In the last few years, the amount of light oil being produced in the US has gone up and up and up, and the amount of kind of heavy stuff has gone down. But back to those refineries. They need to be fed. If America's going to have gasoline, it needs to feed those refineries with heavy oil. So if you look at the kind of imports coming into America in recent years, even though America is producing so much oil, more oil than it ever produced before, it still needs to suck in loads of oil from overseas. And the type of oil we're talking about, it used to be, it's mostly heavy crude. It used to be only 12%. So only 12% of imports were heavy, gloopy crude. Now, it's about 70%. So 70% of the oil coming into America, which it needs to basically keep its economy going, is heavy crude. And where does heavy crude come from? Well, here are some of the big countries where you find most of it. It's Canada and Venezuela. There's one other I'll come to in a second, which we'll come back to. But it's Canada and it's Venezuela where you get most of this heavy crude oil, which is why, about to think about where those refineries are, they're mostly set up, kind of, you've got some in the north there to get the heavy oil coming out of Canada, and you've got some around the kind of Louisiana and elsewhere and Texas to get that heavy oil that comes in from Venezuela. That was kind of the way they were set up. And it's really expensive to rebuild these things. You can't just chuck out a refinery very easily overnight. Some came from Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico as well, and that was pretty heavy too. So that's the picture in America. And the upshot is, even though America is producing more and more oil, the imports, this is showing you imports of oil into America, are still really high. And if you break down those imports by the country that stuff is coming from, well, there's Venezuela. And it used to be a decent slug, actually more coming from Venezuela just about than from Canada, just at the turn of the millennium. But now look at what's happened since. Right now, Canada has gone from 15% of all of the US imports of oil to 61%. 61%. And Venezuela is basically next to nothing. But here's what's tantalizing, and here's the reason I think that a lot of people are looking towards Venezuela and thinking, well, there's more to this than just drugs. Look at total oil reserves around the world. The higher these bars are, the more oil there is in the ground, so that hasn't yet been taken out of the ground. So there you've got Saudi, Iran, Iraq, all of the usual suspects. But the biggest of all, and this is according to various different sources, the biggest of all is Venezuela. And what's that oil? It's the heavy, tarry stuff.
It's in the ground. They're not taking it out. So you know what we got to do? We got to take it out. And we got to prop up some story. If you're the person that still believes there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, then you believe that this was all about drugs. If you believe that we had to kill Gaddafi because of something else, then you believe that this is all about drugs. There's no way you can tell me that this war, us invading, is about drugs when the first thing that Trump said was it's about oil. My thing is, just don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. If it's about oil, let's say it. If we're so dependent, we need to go rob somebody and we're going to steal it, then just say it. Understand this. We can't get mad or upset when other countries do the same thing. Example, Taiwan produces all of these critical chips that goes into our missiles, critical for AI. Taiwan is not its own country. Taiwan is really a province of China. So what happens when China says, we're tired of you being a providence and over there? We're shutting you down. What can we say? Because they say, well, you did it. You did not. You declared war basically on a sovereign country. That's what we can do. You didn't go to the UN Council. You went to a sovereign country and took their president in the middle of the night. And you justified it by calling them a terrorist. And then you bring them to the United States. You know what we usually do with terrorists? At least he is getting a fair trial, because usually with our terrorists, we throw them in Guantanamo Bay. And then we just don't give them a trial. We just let them stay there for 20, 25 years. And just say they're too dangerous to let out. After 25 years, we don't even know if they're guilty or not.
That you might well want to put into those American refineries. And there is really only one other place in the world that has a kind of serious amount of heavy oil other than Canada and Venezuela. And lo and behold, guess where that is? It's Russia. All of which is to say, you know, it matters what kind of oil America needs. It's worth just delving into these kind of nuances, because that helps you understand a little bit more about the backstory of geopolitics.
Talk to me.
The next person I listened to, and this really changed my whole perspective. The whole perspective. Like I said, it wasn't about drugs. It may not even be about oil. Then what is it really about?
about Venezuela. So China is the thing that I'm very sad anytime people get distracted, because while I would love to hold hands and march into the future with China as an ally, but we not decouple, but we get realistic about not letting anyone control certain aspects of our way of life. Certainly not somebody who has proven that they will very rapidly become an adversary. What is Venezuela all about? How does China figure into this, and what should we do?
I believe Venezuela is a red herring. I believe
He's going to explain it's not about Venezuela. They just happen to be the wrong people at the wrong time. Listen to what it's really about.
that all of the Venezuela talk and the Venezuela focus is not actually the focus of the president, not actually the focus of the Department of War, as it's now called. I believe that that is all a red herring that's being given to us as a pill that we'll accept, because we all kind of agree Venezuela's, we don't know anything about it. That's what we all really believe. We don't know anything about Venezuela except Maduro bad. And we all hate drugs. So if you can
speak for yourself, Andrew Bustamante. No,
so if you can,
I'm kidding.
If you can affiliate Venezuela with drugs, then boom, yeah, of course we're against it. Rah, rah, rah. Let's blow up boats and let's show American power off the coast of our own country. Now, why do I believe that that's a big red herring? When you look at the actual evidence, the objective realities of the claims that are being made, we're fighting a drug war against narco-terrorism or narco-terrorists, right? The term narco-terrorist has an actual definition, right? And that definition for a terrorist has to be the use of violence to gain a political change. That's
the only reason I'm stopping this is if you remember what Hugo Chavez said, that they labeled him a terrorist. Why did they label him a terrorist? Because that's the only way you can send in the CIA, the FBI, and other clandestine people instead of using the army. We label someone so we can do some other things to them, because if not, we couldn't do it.
That is what's required of a terrorist. They must use violent, lethal attacks in an effort to force political change. Narco-terrorists would just be drug-funded or drug-related terrorists. That's the definition that's out there for everybody to look up. Well, the cartels aren't doing that. The cartels aren't using violence, particularly not violence against the United States, to change politics. That's where the argument comes from recently, that they're trying to say, oh no, Maduro weaponized cocaine. He weaponized cocaine specifically to attack Americans. Even if that was the case, what's the political change that he's trying to drive? Because that's the important part about a terrorist. They have to be driving a political agenda. Secondly, only 15% of all the cocaine at most, only 15% of the cocaine that enters the United States comes through Venezuela. 100% of it almost is created in Colombia. But then
we're not doing anything with Colombia. We're not doing anything with Mexico. And we're certainly not doing anything with China with their fentanyl. So why would we be invading another country because of this? I'm just asking the questions because I want you to think. When they put something on TV and they're telling you this is about drugs, just like they told us 9/11 was about weapons of mass destruction and we had to get there fast. Think about the smoke screen. Think about the history of things that have been done. How many dictators have we taken down, destroyed their economy, and then we walk away and say, that's what happens? How many times have we been lied to and said, oh, this is one thing when it's really something else? And this is what's happening here. It's easy for them to justify going in. Nobody likes drugs. Like you said, nobody wants drugs in the United States. That's one. But number two, how can you arrest somebody who has drugs in their country? It doesn't matter. If it gets to the United States, you arrest the people who brought it to the United States. But you're going to go to another country and say, well, I'm arresting you for making drugs in your country. What sense does that make? What if somebody said that there is a warrant against Trump and they wanted to come to the White House and take him out because he sent guns here. They sent something here. Wouldn't happen, couldn't happen. But we say might is right. We do to other countries what we would destroy them for doing to us. We justify what we do with money and everything else. We do this to other countries and say, yeah, and then we try to police other countries and say, how dare you do it? How dare you do this? How bad you are.
Small fraction is sent through Venezuela and then shipped up to Puerto Rico, where it goes into the American postal system, and then it can be shipped all over the United States. A small percentage. Upwards of 90% of all cocaine goes through Mexico. So why are we focused on Venezuela? If we're trying to fight cocaine, why wouldn't we focus on Mexico? Why are we focused on Venezuela? Doesn't make any sense in terms of volume. Then you start to think about other issues. One of Venezuela's top two military weapons partners are Russia and China.
I want you to listen to this. This is so important. And he's going to say it, and I don't think people really understand. When we help out Ukraine, people say, why are you helping out Ukraine? Why do we help out Ukraine? This is what you call a paramilitary war. What we do in Ukraine is we can't field test a lot of our military items. We make it, but it's like having a car that you never get to drive. You only want to see how it performs. So what we do is we send not our first class weapons, our secondary weapons over to Ukraine. We don't care if they work or not. We're not in the fight. Let's see what happens. And then we sit back and we say, oh man, this is how that worked in engagement. Now we need to do something different. Or this is how it's changed. Now we need to do something different. Listen to who supplies Venezuela with most of their military operations. Oh yeah, it's the all about the energy. I know we don't want to say this, and I know that other countries shouldn't have it, but this is why those countries like Iraq, they say we want a nuclear bomb. They say we want the nukes. Why? Nobody's invading South Korea, and he's a dictator. Nobody's invading Palestine. Shit, they barely going after Israel. Why? Because they nuclear weapons. So countries are so tired of the United States bullying them that this is why they want to develop that power. You're trying to dictate what somebody else does. But here, I want you to listen to what the real reason is. We found out it's not drugs. Not drugs. Hugo Chavez said, it got to be about the oil because we're the number one oil producers. What's in our ground in Saudi Arabia that's in the world. Is it really about that?
Russia historically, China more currently. Venezuela also maintains one of the largest amphibious assault forces in all of Latin America. And guess who provided all of their amphibious assault weapons? China. So if you really want to know what an amphibious assault would look like of China against Taiwan, you want to get a look under the hood of what the amphibious assault looks like in Venezuela. What do their capabilities look like? What do the weapons look like? How would they use them? He claimed that China controlled the Panama Canal. That's not fully correct. The more correct way of saying it would be that China controlled the entrance and exit ports of the Panama Canal. They were predominantly owned by a Hong Kong subsidiary. In March of this year.
Now, I don't know if y'all remember this. Trump wanted to name it the American Canal because the Americans, helped build the Panama Canal. And because of that, we had a lease on it for forever. And then we just turned it over to Panama. And then Panama said, well, we leased it out to Hong Kong. We didn't like that. We didn't like that another country, especially on a whole nother continent, would have any connections to the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is so important because from our ports, we can go west or east easily and ship our goods. Not only our ships, our goods, but our military, where other people can't do that if we don't let them around. We would only have to face something on one front.
Trump demanded that Hong Kong subsidiary sell a majority stake to U.S. investment company BlackRock, I believe it was. So then in August of this year, that transfer actually happened. So it was only in August 25th of this year, that the Panama Canal became majoritively owned by U.S. investment firms instead of majoritively owned by Chinese investment firms. And then within 2 weeks after that date, the first drug boat was blown up off the coast of Venezuela.
Really?
So I'm not saying we have smoking guns, but I'm saying we have multiple verified independent sources of information that point to the fact that our conflict in Venezuela actually isn't about Venezuela.
Listen to what he said. As soon as the ink dried, that Hong Kong was out, that was turned over to us. We didn't want China anywhere in the Caribbean seas at all. How do we justify that? Venezuela is drug dealers. Now what we have to do is we got to send all our military ships out to the Caribbean. What do? We surrounded it. We seen all of our aircraft carriers, our submarine, all surrounding the Central and South America. You think that was for Venezuela? Do you really think that our warships were for Venezuela? Come on now. We weren't bombing their warships. We were bombing some fishing ships, 15-footers. This is not military action. We were trying to send a message to somebody else, and Venezuela was just a pawn. Yep, the inland aren't great to move the military. That's why we put them on both coasts. You're right, LJ. We put them on both coasts. And that's why it was so hard in World War II to come after us. Because in order to come after the United States, you got to fight them on two fronts. You got the Atlantic and the Pacific. That's the only way you can get them. You can't just come one way. You got to fight us on two fronts, which makes us dangerous. And that's why if you control the Panama Canal, you can't get through.
China owns huge chunks of the Caribbean. China has massive leases on infrastructure and military bases and ports all across the Caribbean. They have rare earth mineral rights across the Caribbean. Their major shipping routes go through the Caribbean. We move all of our shit to the Caribbean just to tell the Chinese, don't forget, this is our house.
That's why we moved our stuff. It wasn't for Venezuela. This was a piss on China. Just like when the Russians came to Cuba and with the Cuban Missile Crisis, it's just the same thing. We just seen who got the biggest penis, or warships in this instance.
And that's what we're doing here right now. We've consolidated our forces. Look how fast it happened when we were fighting Venezuela. How fast do you think it's going to happen if you mess with us? How fast can we take your Caribbean investments? How fast can we cut off your flow, not just to the American market, but also to all of your own rare earth minerals and all of your supply chains in the Caribbean? And oh, by the way, if you think that you're going to continue to grow influence in Latin America and South America, which it has, China's increased its partnerships all across Latin America.
Massively. Look
by
up
the way,
gold corridor.
Yeah. By the way, don't forget that we're their neighbor. It's a huge message. It's a huge message that was arguably effective enough to walk China off the tariff cliff that Trump just closed with them recently. The first thing
he stated this before the war. Now this is his response after the war.
To understand is that without a doubt, this operation is going to be contested as potentially illegal. What we saw here was something called an extraordinary rendition, something we haven't seen since the global war on terror, when U.S. military forces were recruited by CIA in order to go out and capture terrorists and bring them back to the United States for trial. That's exactly what you saw happen with Nicolas Maduro. You saw the CIA use military forces to go into a sovereign country to capture not just any terrorist, but their actual sitting president.
Their sitting president. Think about that. And the way we could justify it is be calling a narco-terrorist. All I want you guys to really understand and get out of this is, don't let somebody piss on you and say that it's raining. When the United States, and I'm an American citizen, born and raised through generations, but I know that when we say one thing, it's not always that one thing. We say one thing so the people will agree with it. 9/11, the terrorists, we got to go get We got to go get Osama bin Laden, who was in Afghanistan, but we went to Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction that we never found out. Man, that's kind of weird, isn't it? We had to go get Gaddafi, maybe because he wanted to unionize all of Africa under that. Well, what about the BRICS? What about the petrodollar? Well, we can't have any of that. We can't have people selling petroleum and not using the American dollar. And I think Venezuela did that with China. Oh, we can't do that. This isn't always about drugs. Sometimes it's about the money. You got to move the veil out and don't say what we can't do. Oh, man. We still trying to investigate what happened to JFK. And they still don't release the files. We still trying to find out what happened to Epstein. And they still won't release the files. Do you think they're going to let you know that it's something else other than what they want you to think it is?
The entire country was built off of an administration, a series of federal and government systems that were dependent on Maduro. So in Maduro's absence, we can expect to see chaos across Venezuela. We can expect to see institutions fail. We can expect to see conflict in the streets. Police are going to be without leadership. The continuation of government is going to be confused and disoriented. And that's assuming the United States does not carry out any more additional strikes inside the country. Without labeling Maduro and the government of Venezuela as a narco-terrorist organization, the Trump administration wouldn't have been able to carry out operations against.
Now, do you understand why he's a drug dealer? Because in order for us to go in, that's what we have to label. And did we never learn anything? I think he's going to go into it, and I think I have this. Whenever you take a dictator out of the power, everything goes corrupt. Do you think when we killed Pablo Escobar that stopped the drugs coming? No, 10 more popped up. Do you think when we went over to Afghanistan and we said, hey, y'all got to get rid of this? What happened? They supplied more poppy seeds than they ever did. Whenever you take that's what's happening in Nigeria right now. You have a dictator, and once you take one dictator out, everybody fights for it. That's what's happening in Haiti. We always do that. We go into places, Somalia, Yemen, every place we go in and say we're going to take their dictator out, and then we leave, and we take the resources, and then it crumbles. And if he doesn't, I'll say it, and maybe he's going to repeat it. The drug dealers, Maduro had been selling drugs. He was giving Chavez money way back in the day for that. But as he came up to power, every space he filled was with his people. So you know who else has an indictment right now? The vice president of Venezuela, the secretary of defense, and every cabinet that came up is all a part of that cartel. So what are you going to do? Take the whole country out and leave them vacuum? Who's going to supply them? We don't like dictators. We say that, but sometimes those dictators is what's keeping it together. Yeah, Nicaragua, man,
against the sovereign state of Venezuela itself. So you can see that Maduro has been at the game for a long time. And as he started to climb through the political hierarchy, he would backfill the positions beneath him with trusted loyalists who were also part of the Cartel de los Soles. That means that the current sitting vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, is also part of the Cartel de los Soles. And the defense minister of Venezuela, Pedrino Lopez, is also part of the Cartel de los Soles. In fact, both people have been named in formal indictments by the Department of Justice against Maduro. And the list goes on from there to senior lieutenants that are in all the different branches of the military, including the Air Force and the Navy, because those are the organizations that are relied upon in order to take the smuggled cocaine out of Venezuela and across the ocean into the United States.
Man, I came on to hear it because I just kept seeing in all the comments, one, that this was about drugs. And then I wanted to talk to some Latino people and find out how they felt. Now, I will say this. The Latino people and the Venezuelans that are in the United States, oh, they celebrate. They happy. They love it. This is freedom. This is this. Oh, this is a great time. Are we going to ship them back? I mean, the reason we didn't ship them back before because they said that Their lives were in danger, and they were part of a narco state, and they needed asylum. So now that the president is gone, are they going to leave? We're going to kick them out? Because before, what we were doing was not sending them. Anytime you had a dude committing drugs or committing any type of crime, we were sending them. We were sending them down to what's that? Ecuador, El Salvador. So now we're just going to ship them back. And what if they don't want to go back? Because they get a little comfortable when they get to the United States. They've been here 8 years. They've done established a life. They got kids that probably been born here that only speak English, to know nothing about Venezuela. So now you have a Venezuelan mom and dad, sister, brother, whomever. They came from Venezuela. They're not citizens of the United States. They just seek asylum. They have a child here. Now that child is what? Soiled. They're United States citizen. You getting rid of them? You sending them back? I mean, they got to go, right? Is that what we're going to do? Probably not. So now we just created another problem. What are we going to do with their infrastructure if the 90% of the government is part of the cartel? What are we going to do with the oil? Do you think that after we get a refinery there, we set everything up, we take the oil out the ground, just like in any other place, whether it's Africa or any place that has resources, the country never benefits. That country never benefits. And what we did, we set a precedent for any other country to do the same thing to somebody else. So when Russia says, you know what, we were the USSR, and Poland and all of these places were part of us, we want them back. What can we do? Or any place can say, we talk about the Uyghurs that China has. China says, lie. They did bad. We can take them over. Might doesn't make right. And we try to justify what we do. But when I listen, like I said before, I listen to people who were in the United States, the Latinas. I said, man, they were free, happy. Everybody's happy for that. And then I talked to some other friends of mine who were in the Colombia, who were in the Venezuela, who fled from Venezuela, but still in Latin America, some Dominicans. And they got a whole different perspective. Their thing is, if he can do that to them, why couldn't he do that to us? For whatever reason. If he can go there, why not just go to Cuba and take their dictator because we don't like him? Why not go to Dominican Republic? Or what did Trump say? The drugs are coming from Colombia. And Pedro, who is the president of Colombia, better be careful. Man, you threaten sitting elected presidents because you don't like what they do. We set up these puppets in these other places and then wonder why it doesn't work. And I hate to bring up Africa, but I heard a gentleman say the same thing. He said, do you think a state like Nigeria is Nigeria? He's like, no, Nigeria was different tribes. And they just drew a line and said, this is Nigeria. Those Nigerian people didn't talk the same language, didn't have the same culture, didn't have anything the same. And we called them Nigerians. Instead of get along. We go in and draw the line where we want to. We always do it. We always have. We throw rocks and then hide our hands like it never happened. And then we talk bad about the same countries that we destroyed. Well, when Afghanistan, look, we left them and look what happened. They went right back to this and they put the women on here. You just went in and took everything and didn't leave them anything. And then we blame the people who we did that to. But here's the thing. I tell them, China has 1 billion people. If you killed 1 million people a day for an entire year, they would still have more population than us, than the United States. You kill 1 million people a day for an entire year, and they still got more population than us. We don't want to mess with them. But this is about China. This is about Russia. But we better be careful, because our AI, our missiles, they all rely on a specific chip that we set up in Taiwan factories for the Taiwan to make. Do you know what Trump has never said? He's never said the president of Taiwan. You know why? Because there is a president of Taiwan. Because we can't recognize the president of Taiwan. Why? Because it's a providence of China. And China says there is no president of Taiwan. Taiwan is China. And the only president of China is the one sitting here. So if one day China says, you know what? We'll go in and we're going to take Taiwan back, meaning we're shutting it down. We have no right to say anything because it's theirs. And when Russia wants to go invade another place because whatever reason, they don't need a reason. We can't say it's wrong because we set the precedents. I just wanted you guys to think. I'm going to get off of here, but just think when something happens and somebody tells you something, and that's the reason why, dig a little bit deeper, go a little bit further, and find out the real reason why those things happen. Sometimes we say things just so, it's easier to swallow, but some pills are hard to swallow. And I travel a lot. In every place that I've gone, they like the American people. They hate the American government. Oh, they hate the American government. And sometimes, as a person who travels, that puts us in jeopardy. When I say us, it's the people who travel. Because it doesn't matter if you're black, white, whatever. When they see that passport, you're an American. And everything that something happens to an American, you represent. Stay sharp, stay strong, man. And stay fearless. Because you're either going to be fearless or you're going to be forgotten. And just to let you know, before I close out, 7 o'clock, 2 hours, we're going to run it right back. We're going to talk about fraud and fuel, Somalia and Venezuela again. I'll be hosting with Ronan Travels. So go get you something to eat, something to drink, and digest. And don't take what I said as law. I'm just a guy on the internet. Do your own research, man. And don't let what somebody tells you in the White House or on the news tell you that that's true. Research yourself. See you in 2 and 2.